And the invitation is there for me, for us, when we're in a situation where it doesn't feel safe, to work with the safety inside ourselves, the unsafety on the other side, and see how in the middle it comes together and we can create a safe space within ourselves in this not safe environment.
Welcome to Safe Space Made Simple, a practical podcast that guides clinical leaders and healthcare managers to create trust and support with their teams. I'm your host, Trace Hobson. Join me for weekly interviews, practical tools, and inspiring transformational stories of bringing people together in healthcare. Now, let's dive in. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Safe Space Made Simple. I'm so glad that you're here to listen to today's show because Caroline Vierman and I get into a really important conversation if you've ever experienced the following. If you've been in an organization, in a healthcare organization before, have you ever noticed that when somebody's been around for a long time and either they leave the organization because they go somewhere else or they retire, that there's not a lot of backfilling or succession planning that fills that gap after they're gone? Have you ever noticed this? Both Caroline and I noticed this phenomenon in healthcare leadership, where organizationally we just don't seem to have time to do that planning. And when somebody leaves, that's when we really feel it. And then, of course, we do operational restructuring and organizational restructuring to try and adjust. And that's just a fancy way of saying that people are about to get more work on their plates. And so what Caroline and I talk about is how when you have a psychologically safe space, a neurobiologically safe space, what ends up happening is succession can happen naturally if you know what to look for. And so in today's conversation, we talk about that so that if you're a clinical leader, a manager, or you're on a team, you're identifying who is it that I can have replace me when I go? Who is it? And why would I even want to do that or identify that person? So we get into that today, and we notice that when there's a safe space, succession can happen naturally, so that when people leave, there's somebody there to pick up the slack so that we don't get more added to our plates when we don't want that. So it's a great conversation. And without further ado, let's get right into the show. The challenge that I hear you saying that your organization faces is that oftentimes people leave and there's no real plan to replace them until after they leave. Am I catching that right?
Yeah.
What's that like when that happens for your operation? What do you notice?
Well, we have learned as a group of managers, to to look at the possibilities, at the opportunities that are opening up. For example, now we are with 15 managers in this particular sector where I work in healthcare. And 3 of them are leaving around summer, around
Mhm.
June, July. So that's quite a lot, of course. And we don't have this succession strategy or plan. And so it left us with this question. So what wants to happen here is actually the question we asked ourselves as a group, and also the manager of this group asked himself this question. So what we've decided on to use this shift in number of managers to look at the way we have organized our units, etc. And we have also decided to rearrange from a more client-centered perspective, and then do the work with maybe 10 unit managers. So we move to a greater span of attention, and bring our team leaders in a different position. And well, that's what we're
So,
working towards too.
So this is what we do in Canada all the time too. So what I hear you saying is you're restructuring the organizational structure and the operational structure based on the fact that people are leaving. But I still think that there's a huge missing piece to what you're sharing, and also what I notice here, and
Yeah,
that is that we don't have any way of capturing the wisdom and the knowledge and the experience of people before they leave.
yeah,
We have people that leave after 20, 25, 30 even years, and there's no succession planning that's practiced so that there's mentoring and teaching and backfilling of that role. So we have directors or executive directors that leave, or managers or leaders, clinical leaders, and there's nobody there to fill that hole. So we do exactly what you're describing. Okay,
yeah.
we're going to rethink the whole operation. We're going to change it. And my question to you is, what's the systemic invitation for succession?
Uh, I don't know. Listening to you, I realized that we do have succession planning for the professionals that are working with our clients. For example, one of my professionals, she will be leaving in 6 years' time. And we have already started with this process of, um, yeah, how would you sharing her wisdom with others, etc., making sure that she can easily leave and somebody else is already then in place and can take over.
That's
But we
great.
don't, yeah, we don't have those processes for the organizational leaders.
Well, even I would like, for us, even team leaders are not really thinking about that. They're just thinking about getting the work done. And I think this is a big gap, because the question I always ask people is, okay, who is going to replace you? If you were to not come back to work tomorrow, who have you been working with that's going to replace you? And people oftentimes have a bit of a reaction to that because, well, replace me. So if I find somebody and mentor them and train them to replace me, what am I going to do?
Oh, yeah.
Right? What will I do? Do you mean like after I leave? No, actually, we should be actually replacing ourselves before we ever have to leave.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, yeah. Well, I think in our organization, I know in our organization, when a unit manager leaves, it's the team leaders that continue the way of working and know how all the processes work. I've experienced that myself. I was away from work for a year and a half, and my team leader stepped forward and she made sure that everything continued and well, she carried on the work. And then I came back, I'm taking over a few things, but basically the team leaders are running the place.
Right.
So if I were to leave again, they would step forward.
Right.
Um,
So,
yeah.
but do you think that so what was it that was the catalyst for that to happen?
For my team, when I was away, for my team leader to step forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Like
an interesting
what caused
question.
that? What caused
Yeah,
that to
because
happen?
normally, well, in our organization, normally a interim manager would have would have they would have been looking for an interim manager, and they
Mhm.
would he or she would come in and run the business. But my actually my team leader, she was feeling so confident, and she felt that she had my full support, and she dared to step forward and well, basically say, we don't need an interim manager. I'll do
Mm.
it. And that was okay.
So what were you doing with her before this that created that kind of confidence and that opportunity for her?
Yeah, it's got to do with creating a safe space, of course, a safe
Right.
space for her, but obviously for all of the staff to to yeah, to work and to do things in a right way, but also to make mistakes and know and feel that I, as her boss, will always have her back, whatever
Mm,
it is that comes out of a certain action, as long as the intention is all right. When there's obviously a bad intention to do harm, then it's a whole other story.
right.
But when the intention is right, and well, sometimes things they take another course than that you would want the things to run and develop. But I always have the back of my staff
Hmm.
and my team leaders, and she knew that. She knows that.
Right.
So, and apart from that, I always, I did, and I still do. I, uh, I invite her to, yeah, to do things together,
Right.
so it's not that, there's a big fence around my work,
Hmm.
but there's fluidity, and we talk about that. I share my struggles. I share, um, I don't know, the pros and the cons, and all of that.
Mm.
So it wasn't all that strange to her.
Right. Yeah, you're describing for me what I call sort of shared leadership and also
Yeah,
relational equity that happens naturally when you feel safe. When people
yeah,
feel safe and they have that, yes, top down safety, so psychological safety, but also they really do believe that the person that they're working with does have their backs.
yeah,
They are willing to try things. That is a natural equity that starts to build, and especially when the leader recognizes that they can't do everything, it's actually about us doing it together. It changes the dynamic. And the point I'm making with this conversation, or that I feel is important, there's a natural succession that happens when you show up like this. People will identify for themselves, or you will identify that they have the potential to replace you in your role. And then what will happen is the system naturally wants to expand. So there's going to be something that opens up for a person like you at some point, and it's going to invite you in, and then the natural the vacuum that creates will be filled by that person, and then somebody behind that person who they've been working with will naturally expand too. So it's a self-replicating
yeah,
phenomenon, and it's natural when you feel safe. It just naturally happens. And I noticed, like, the big contrast in healthcare oftentimes is we're trying to make this stuff happen with the absence of a safe space. And then we're wondering why it doesn't work.
yeah, yeah.
Right.
But yeah, and what I'm describing now is, well, is not that common in healthcare in the Netherlands, as it may seem now. I'm talking about this, but I know that especially in the more medical, um, more like hospitals, etc., it isn't safe at all for
Mm,
people to work there. There's really a top down, um, and a very, um, yeah, how would you say, where people are driven by their egos, uh,
mm,
culture. So that's quite a different sector. Um,
right. Yeah, we
yeah,
would call that command and control,
yeah,
and pretty hierarchical. So,
yeah,
yeah, why do you think it's not so common for what we're talking about in settings like this? Like, okay, so people don't feel safe, and then there's like these problems that come up as a result of that, right? I don't know how it is in Holland, but I know in Canada there's a chronic problem with staff shortages
yeah,
and also retention. People don't want to stay on teams that don't feel safe, so they end up leaving. they might blame the leader or they blame the circumstances or the work or the operation, but ultimately there's no support system there where they feel like people have their backs. And so
Yeah.
super simple, when that happens, people don't really want to get out of bed feeling excited to go to work,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
and that's a big problem that we keep trying to solve, but we haven't come up with solutions. And I think part of the reason for us is that we want quick fixes. Sometimes we want to just, get it done, fix it, check the box and move on. But the truth is that we need to develop relationship with each other and a safe space where that can happen. That means we got to resolve the past stuff or conflicts or things that have happened and move forward together. And that's not so easy, I think, in that command and control environment.
No, and what I also think and realize is that it's very important. I feel that, or if the one who is in control feels open and feels willing to uh, to start exploring another way of working together.
Right.
And if there's no urgency felt at that level, then why would someone who has been in the position of power for maybe years, why would he or she give up power and open up to
Hmm.
another culture, another way of working, when for him or her things are all fine?
Yeah, I don't think they are fine though. And a lot of leaders that I talk to that even though they've kind of been in that mode for a long time, they are coming to the realization that what they've done in the past is not working anymore. Like command and control did and does work in certain circumstances, but when it comes to creating a team culture where people want to work, that doesn't work. And so
Mm.
people are leaving and you can't deny
Yeah.
it. It doesn't matter how high up the tower you are, when you notice, like, I don't know about, again, in Canada, I think the stat says something like up to as much as 56% of people that work in healthcare are seriously considering leaving in the next couple of years. And this is a big problem that any leader, no matter how comfortable they might be, has got to wrestle with. So I think it's not working, the old way. It's just now, to your point though, those leaders also need to feel safe. And in a deep way, they feel anxiety and they don't know what to do, and there's uncertainty. And even to be able to feel safe enough to admit that is a huge deal. And what I find with leaders when I'm working with them is when they can be a human being and actually admit that, everything starts to change at that point, right? It's not about them having all the answers or being perfect. They actually get to let themselves off their own hook. Hi, everybody. Just a quick interruption to the show to ask you a really important question. Are you a clinical leadership bunny, fox, deer, or cat? If you're a clinical leader or an educator, you know as well as I do that it's important for you to develop your leadership and to make sure that you're seeing yourself, not just from your perspective, but also from other people's perception of who you are and the way that you lead. So, to help you with this, I've developed a really fun and quick quiz that identifies these four archetypes. Are you a leadership bunny, fox, deer, or cat? It will help you to identify who you are and the way that you land for other people. But then, even more importantly, it will help you to go down underneath that to find your superpower and the way that will be most naturally beneficial for you to lead. So, go ahead and click on the link in the show notes of this show so that you can access that free quiz today. And then let me know, which one are you? Are you a leadership bunny, fox, deer, or cat? Now, back to the show.
I feel there's always two sides to everything. Of
Yeah.
course, there are a lot of also in the Netherlands, a lot of managers, leaders, doctors also who grew up in this hierarchical top-down reality and who don't feel invited into some other way of working. Although they know the stats, they are not willing to open up and whatever, because otherwise they would be doing that,
Right.
wouldn't they? So, but on the other side of the coin, there's us, of course. Well, me, for example, I'm not in that position of the top leader or so, and a lot of us are not in that position. And the invitation is there for me, for us, when we're in a situation where it doesn't feel safe, to to work with the safety inside ourselves, the unsafety on the other side, and see how in the middle it comes together and we can create a safe space within ourselves in this not safe environment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the key, isn't it? I think that there's something really powerful in what you're sharing about, first of all, human beings. I believe human beings have the ability to generate that safety for themselves, even
Yeah.
if it's in chaos. But we're talking about not something that is just intellectual or something that we can describe in language, but it's something that we actually feel from the inside out. It's that peace that transcends understanding. And to your point about those that are sort of in that position and have been there for a long time, I think this is connected to, if we can create experiences of what we're talking about rather than just talking about it, then everything changes at that point.
Yeah.
That bypasses the normal resistances that people have for one reason or another, whether it's bias or if it's just being sort of set in your ways. When you experience, this kind of safety where people have each other's backs, it's undeniable, and you don't have to sell it because it's just true that people enjoy working in that kind of an environment. And no matter how sort of resistant you might be, if you start noticing people coming to work smiling and wanting to be there and starting to work differently, it even invites you into that too. And it's sort of bypasses the resistances when you experience it rather than just talking about it.
Yeah. But when it's not there, you have a choice to either leave, which a lot of people do, and I'm not saying that's wrong, because it's very healthy
Yeah, totally.
to hold a to be true to your own boundaries. So you either leave, or you you find another way of relating to this unsafe space where you find yourself in. Because if you don't find another way of relating to that reality and to creating this safe space inside yourself, and, well, find a way in remaining present in this intense situation, then there is no other option than to leave.
Mm-hmm. So, what are your
Oh,
suggestions for somebody that's in that position? What can they do to relate differently within themselves and with the situation around them? Because I think there's a lot of people that are in that
yeah, yeah,
situation
yeah.
right now, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of people. Well, if you were willing to stay there and in this unsafe situation, in this unsafe culture or whatever you find yourself, and you were able to look at it as a learning environment for yourself, and as a learning environment that contributes to your wholeness and
Mm-hmm.
to your healing of whatever needs to be healed, then the same circumstance gets a totally different connotation. And there might be other possibilities opening up for you. I have experienced this myself, so I'm talking from my own experience. I had when I first started in healthcare, I had a manager who was really, really unsafe. She wasn't able to create a safe space I started as a team leader, and all the people in the teams I started to work with, they were afraid of her. So there was a lot of talking in the halls about her, a lot of complaints, a lot of everything that goes on when there's an unsafe manager. And I was able, with the help of some people around me who helped me shift the way I was looking at the situation. So I started looking at it as an opportunity for me to shine my light even stronger, uh, and to not be dependent on the circumstances on the outside, whether my light would shine or not.
Mm.
And so if I can share some of the exercises I started working with, but
Sure.
anyway, I started doing my inner work. And the funny thing was that within, I think, a month, she and we had established a really warm relationship. I wasn't asking any safety from her because I was providing my own safe space.
Right.
And I was just there in the conversation with her. And within a month, there was confidentiality between us.
Mhm.
And the other remarkable thing was that within a half year, she left the organization and asked me if I was willing to be her successor. So,
That is an amazing story. So this is really important what you're bringing up. So you developed a relationship that was different with the situation, and then you developed a relationship that was different with that person, and that ended up serving you and that person too. That's really
yeah.
powerful.
Yeah, and what was really important, I dared to stand on my own ground. I wasn't asking anything from her around safety or being seen
Right.
or whatever, because I was providing that for myself.
Hmm.
And so there wasn't any neediness from my side.
Right.
But there was respect for the way she was dealing with all of it, because she had her own story, obviously, because we're not born that way. Well, at least I think nobody is born a bully or someone who wants to hurt other people um, on purpose. So I was respecting her at the same time in who she was.
Right.
And we found each other on the things that had to be done, the
Mhm.
work we had to do together.
Right.
And in that equation, things started to shift. And it wasn't easy uh,
Mhm.
at all. It was quite scary in the beginning, I
Right.
must admit. Um, but yeah, there was a small success, and then that gave me the energy to do it again, step forward and shine my light. And yeah, that's how I grew my confidence.
Mm. You're answering the question that you asked earlier about what's going to actually change for a leader in situations where they feel like it's unchangeable. Like you just described exactly what happens. And I think the key that I heard in what you shared that's really quite important is that you shifted your definition of what was happening from something happening to you to something happening for you in your
Yeah,
development, and that this was an invitation for you to develop as a person, and to, in your words, let your light shine regardless of the circumstances. It's not about what's happening outside me, it's what's happening inside me.
yeah,
um, so, and of course, there's limits on this. I'm not, I
of
wouldn't
course.
say that,
Yeah,
nobody gets to act consistently disrespectful or abusive or psychologically unsafe or hazardous and not be held to account for that. That's not what we're talking about here. So let's just categorize that
yeah,
separately. But there
yeah,
are lots of sort of, you know, um, bullies who wouldn't identify themselves as bullies, or condescending communication, or communication that's not helpful or safe. It's kind of um heavy-handed, and it can feel really difficult to work with somebody like that. And so when you switched to this being for me, not it's not happening to me, it's happening for me, and it was a developmental invitation, you said, I started to work with what needed to happen inside. What were you doing practically to work with that inside?
Yeah. Well, my exercise, I meditate every morning, and I started visualizing this bright, shining light in my heart space, and shining really forward, backwards, sides to the sides, and I envisioned myself in this shining bright light, and not so much in a bubble of light, because I didn't feel that I needed to be protected from any bad energies that might come in or so, but I was really um, heightening my own frequency in
Mm,
this image of light shining out. And then when I would enter her office, before I'd enter, I'd go to the bathroom and envision myself in this light again, and then step into the room, have a conversation, while in the background, I was aware of this light that was shining out of me. So I was sitting there being light while doing our work. She never knew, but it gave me the confidence of stepping forward, showing myself, and well, and not being needy and all of that. Yeah,
mm.
and it shifted something in her too, but that wasn't my intention. That was a side effect, I'd say.
Yeah. You also said that you had people around you that were supporting you, and that was really helpful too. What were they doing to support you?
They were mostly helping me stopping projecting, stopping my uh, yeah, stopping the blaming I had towards, well, in this case, her, and really, really wanting to look into the mirror,
Mm,
see myself. What was I doing that was contributing to this unsafe situation, um, and really encouraging me, um, supporting me to believe in my own power, to
mm,
believe in my own ability to show up, no matter where or with whom or how scary the situation would be.
mm. Yeah, it's interesting. And how many years ago was that happened? That whole
This
thing?
happened, well, that's now 13 years ago already.
13 years. Wow, it goes by fast,
13
doesn't
years.
it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So when you and I met, there was even at that time there was another layer of this, I feel like,
Yeah.
because at that time you were really considering leaving your job, getting out of healthcare, getting out of the role, and that was going on for you. So it kind of and it's interesting to hear you say that I made it sort of a developmental invitation, because the development doesn't seem to stop either. Like there's like this
No,
invitation to continue to grow that I recognize that is always there. So share a little bit about that. Like when that next layer happened, what was going on there, and what did you do at that point?
but that didn't have to do so much with unsafe situations or unsafe people. That was more um, a situation in which I experienced that a department I had built, and that was sort of my baby. I was very much attached to, um, yeah, to that team and to all that was connected to it. And then the board decided to stop uh, with all of that. And I felt really, well, sad is a uh, understatement. I
Hmm.
felt depleted and, yeah. And yes, I wanted to leave because I thought, well, when there's no appreciation for the value of that particular team and department, so why bother to stay? And then again, I had people around me like you and like my husband and other people who helped me shift my outlook on the situation. So
Hmm.
again, I shifted it from something that happened to me to a situation that was there to do something for me, to help
Hmm.
me develop myself, grow into, I don't know, other potentialities that were present in me. Yeah,
And how many years ago was that?
that was 6 years, 7 years ago.
Yeah, it feels like maybe seven.
Yeah,
I think it might have been
yeah,
7 years ago. Yeah, it's really interesting. I think it's pretty cool to think that there's this personal development program that's available to us at any time in
yeah,
the things that are activating or triggering for us that they're triggering different reactions.
yeah.
And if we want to, we can listen to them and allow them to do their work within us. And it makes me wonder, back to the leader we started this conversation with, who is really struggling for one reason or another to create a safe space for themselves and for others. As you look back, um, what do you think you could do, or what did you do, especially with the first leader in the story you shared? What did you do to help that person realize that they could feel safe too?
I did nothing on purpose. I worked with myself.
I know, but
And
what happened in them though? Because you said that they started to confide in you. They started to,
yeah, so it was me, obviously, who created a safe space for them. You know, when somebody looks at you like, and they see a bully or a leader who they need to be afraid of, then when that image is projected to you, then yeah, what I would say, what other option do you have to
Mhm.
respond
Right,
to that picture that they are creating about you? And maybe whatever you do, it's the lens that people look through while they're looking at you. So
right,
maybe it isn't even unsafe, but people will see it as unsafe when they're wearing that lens. So I didn't do anything on purpose. I just created a safe space for myself. And I saw her for the person that she was. And we talked about work. And then,
what shifted in? So if you notice, like before you had the lens on, when you had that lens on and you saw that person as a bully or whatever, and then you did the work within yourself to let that go, what other characteristics did you learn about that person that happened after that?
well, she was a very warm and caring mother, for example.
Right.
She had a great heart for the clients
Hmm.
we were serving, and her own objective was to guard this specific unit that she was a unit manager of, and help and keep it safe, help it survive and keep it safe, because it was a
Hmm.
very small unit in a big organization, and
Hmm.
she had seen threats and she wanted to keep it safe.
Interesting. And she was doing that in ways that were not safe. That's so interesting to
Exactly.
me, right?
Yeah.
And then the cool part is that once that was created, that dynamic, that relationship between you two, then it was almost like a realization that her work in the system was done, and then she left.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting. Really
Yeah.
interesting. Well, thank you
Yeah.
for that, Caroline. That actually was a great story, and it gave me a little bit more to think about. So thanks for sharing that. As you're talking, I just remember to remind myself that what wants to happen is not always what I want, but
Exactly.
right, but it is what wants to
Exactly.
happen, and then it asks something of me, like who is this developing me
Yeah.
to be, becomes a
Yeah.
real question at that point because I
Yeah.
don't like what's happening.
And that's the thing with with creating a safe space. Of course, there's really work to be done. But the more important question is, who am I becoming
Right.
through this, through all of this?
Right.
And when we know that the soul, our souls, each soul is working so hard to create circumstances for us that really challenge us into difficult things, then who are we to say that it's not okay?
Mhm. Yeah. We get to be who we're meant to be through those
Yeah,
circumstances,
yeah,
right? That actually,
yeah,
it's funny too, because I think the agenda always seems to be for people to be able to feel like they can be 100% who they are,
yeah,
be authentic, be whole and unified, and those tough times often are what develop that ability to show up as who you are wherever you go. I think that that's a really important piece
yeah,
that I have to remind myself in the middle of the times when I don't like what's happening.
yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, also a very relevant question is, of course, so whose permission do you need to let yourself to show yourself, to be
Right.
yourself, to whose permission? It's your own permission.
No more need for permission slips.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is interesting too. Well, I find it interesting how you are going to weave this into your exploration and your work with this safe space, because that's not only on the inside, but it on the outside, but it's definitely also on the inside.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. I think that it also asks for a deeper level of responsibility and understanding of how powerful we are as creators of our own
Yeah.
reality. Because I think a lot of times I've made the mistake of thinking that I needed permission or that I needed to sort of, um, you know, make something or someone different rather than to focus on myself. And I think that that's a cause of a lot of pain in my life,
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, you're right. It has to be an inside out job. It's an inside job.
Yeah. Yeah. I learned that from you and my husband.
Yeah, harm's the man for sure.
Yeah.
All right, welcome to the end of the show. Thank you so much for listening to the end. Both Caroline and I really appreciate your comments and your feed forward for our show. If you could take a moment and rate the show on the platform that you're listening to and also leave a review, that would help us to be able to share our show with more people and attract and ask more guests that will help you in the long run. So I appreciate if you could just leave a rating and also a review on whatever platform you're listening to, whether it's Apple Podcasts or others. So I look forward to seeing those reviews. And of course, as always, if you have any questions, go ahead and reach out to both Caroline and I on LinkedIn. And until the next time, remember to be a safe space. Bye, everybody. Thank you again for getting to the end of this podcast. And if you enjoyed this and you found that there was value in it for you, my invitation is for you to subscribe for future episodes that come out weekly on Tuesdays. Thank you again, and I'm looking forward to being with you next time. Now remember to be a safe space.